Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait,
Bob Anthony.
And I'm Alan Singer.
educator, historian, Dr. Alan Singer, regular Media Watch. Happy to have you again, Dr. Singer. And we're doing this the Wednesday before our normal Monday airing on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and is being brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Zoom's technology, and our co-hosts. Let's start locally, guys. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the world, but the latest development in the New York mayoral race was former Governor Andrew Cuomo coming out and saying he was going to run as an independent. And as part of that, Bob, what was the what's the word you wanted to use about the way he made his announcement and his proposal?
I guess the printable one, I guess, was ridiculous. And uh but his proposal that I mean we just put it in the right time frame. He lost the primary, the Democratic primary to Zohran Mamdani by what, 13 points
15
in
points.
the once they got through with all of the ranked voting.
Mhm.
And now he comes back with a proposal that he would run as an independent, but he wants there to be an independent poll of the remaining candidates, and the one who comes out on top should move ahead, and the rest should drop out, thus uh, almost guaranteeing himself another run for office with less competition. And we were talking before we went on air. Why would anybody else accept this? And Eric, you can tell us what happened with
Well,
the current mayor and the rest of them.
I know the current mayor, who's also running as an independent to gain re-election, promptly stuck a pin in that balloon to blow the air out of it instantaneously, saying the guy who polls said was 40 points up, 14 points up in the primary, Democratic primary, who ended up losing by once all a ranked choice, as you said, by 13 points, now wants us to go back to a poll.
Yeah.
so, so Alan, what was your take on the ridiculousness of the suggestion and the fact that these people are all trying to coalesce against this one particular candidate?
Well, just a couple of things in response to Cuomo's plan. Uh, One is the Republican Party, which has nominated Curtis Lewa to run around the city with his beret, are not going to buy in. They're not disbanding the Republican Party in New York. Uh, Second, Eric Adams is in trouble. He has been denied matching funds. But Eric Adams is also not going to kowtow to Andrew Cuomo. And this is not going to happen. The third person, Jim Walden, was actually the person who came up with that idea. He's a prosecutor, and I think Bob had said earlier, he barely in the Democratic primary outpolled none of the above. So this is a mess. I think what's happened is real estate interests and look, it's the Cuomo, they are conservative Jewish uh, people with money, don't like Mamdani. And Mamdani actually met with real estate interests in New York City just this week and tried to say, look, I will listen to your concerns. The issue is affordability. Don't want to drive you out of business and drive you out of the city. I want to make sure there's housing for the people of New York. But when they were interviewed in the New York Times after, they were incredibly hostile to Mamdani, and they're going to pour money into the campaign. And Cuomo and Adams are going to be competing for that money. But the other issue is Mamdani, well, he's secular, identifies as a Muslim. He was born in Uganda. His father came from the Indian subcontinent, as did his mother. So he was raised secular, but he identifies as a Muslim, and he is tremendously upset over what Israel has done in Gaza and to the Palestinian population in general.
Mhm.
The thing is, I share his upset, and I'm a Jew, but a lot of people are upset. And I think, but that's what's motivating some of the money that's going in to support him. I know in the last primary, the same groups, real estate and pro-Israel, put money into candidates who were running against incumbents, and they didn't do well, but they were pouring money into it. And we also know that Charles Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries,
Jeffries.
while they said they were going to meet with Mamdani, have still not met with him and still not have endorsed the winner of the Democratic primary.
And like we were talking about before we went on air, Zohran is not part of the old school Democratic machine.
Mm.
And that's troubling to the machine, which is used to doling out the proper candidates that they see fit to run. Unfortunately, they keep giving us stale bread when New Yorkers want something fresh. They keep giving us the Landers and the Stringers when Zohran showed up with his positions, and that was fresh. And that's,
Mm.
that's who the voters voted for
Yeah,
heaven's sake. But no, you make an excellent point, Alan. His positions on Gaza works against him. But you support his positions on not having people killed with basically carpet bombing in Gaza.
yeah. I think I told you this on the last show. He was number 3 on my primary ballot. Okay, and and the other 2 candidates that I preferred didn't get enough votes. So my number 3 guy now moves to the top for my preference for 2 reasons. I totally agree with him on the fact that there are not enough people calling out what Netanyahu and his government are doing in Gaza. They're just not calling it out. They're not really calling it what it is. And Alan, we're going to segue to something that speaks to that right after this. And the second reason is because this guy has offered proposals to push back against the 1% that's been running the country and been running the real estate lobbyists and all those money people are all part of that 1% cadre. They want the money people to run New York City, just like Bloomberg forced a 3rd term on the people because of his moneyed interest and his own personal wealth. These 1%ers not only try to run New York City, they try to run the country, and they are running the country and the globe. That is basically, I just saw a headline where Goldman Sachs is making a fortune because of Trump's willy-nilly tariff policies. Because there's so much activity in a volatile stock market, Goldman Sachs and all these brokerage houses are cleaning up. Rest of the folks suffering with higher prices, and we can get to the tariffs issue again, Alan, as we wanted to do. But these 1%ers are running the globe. And this guy says, I'm about the little person. I'm about the people who have been left out, left behind, been downtrodden, being stepped on by the 1%. And I want an affordable New York. And anybody that's going to go against the 1%ers and go for the downtrodden small people who are being stepped on, I'm going to have to support. And because I'm on the same page that he's on what's going on in the Middle East, all the more reason for me to support him. I'm not telling any of our viewers out there what to do, but what I will advise you is read what he says about his positions. Don't listen to what other people say. Read for yourself the man's articulation of why he feels and does what he's doing and what the principles are behind it. Sounds like an upstanding guy worth voting for to me, but make up your own mind out there. But part of this pushback about folks not saying what's going on is something that we need to get into, because the coalition of people against Mamdani are not just Democrats. The GOP MAGA people are basically up in arms about the fact that this Muslim might actually run the city where the financial capital of the country, if not the world, like between London and New York, who knows what the financial capital of the globe is. But these folk are seriously bent out of shape. And so the whacked out orange monster in the White House trying to decide to get rid of this man's citizenship, trying to figure out a way to go after him if he wins the actual election. And there are all kinds of other GOP people who are proposing seriously unconstitutional, illegal things to be used against this one particular candidate. So I don't know, Alan, what Donald Trump and his whacked out MAGA people are doing to our country pretty much is what Netanyahu and his right-wing folk are doing to Israel. You can speak more on that. You're more expert.
There was a very important op-ed piece in the New York Times recently, and it was written by Dr. Omer Bartov, who is an Israeli American. He was born in Israel. He's now a professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University in Rhode Island. We're talking about a man who was a member of the Israeli Defense Forces during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. He was part of the occupying army in the West Bank and in Gaza, and he was seriously wounded while a soldier. Dr. Bartov has now come out and said, as an expert on Holocaust and genocide studies, I have no choice but to say the events taking place in Gaza are the crime of genocide by the state of Israel. This is very, very powerful because he is not seen as an ideologue in any way. He is seen as a very serious, moderate scholar. And he, looking at the evidence, has said this. I know that personally, I believed Israel has committed war crimes, crimes against humanity for a long time, but I was very hesitant to call it genocide. And the reason is the crime of genocide is defined after World War II by the United Nations. And it includes a clause that says the actions must be taking place with intent to destroy a people. And the key word was intent. If people died, were devastated as a cause of war, that's one thing. It may be a war crime, but it's not genocide. But if they were consciously setting out to destroy this group of people, that's genocide. And Bartow has said there are members of the ruling cabinet, including Netanyahu, who've called for the total destruction of the Gaza Strip, wiping it off the face of the earth, calling the people there human animals. And what he said is, if we now look at the actions of the Israeli military and look at the statements by the Israeli government, there is clear intent to destroy the Palestinian people as a people. And the most recent thing Israel announced is it was going to basically push the entire Palestinian population into a narrow reserve area because they've already destroyed 3/4 of the buildings in Gaza. They've killed almost 60,000 people, including 17,000 children. There may be another 10,000 people buried in the ruins. 138,000 people have been wounded and maimed, including the greatest number of amputee children per capita in the world. And what Bartov said is, given the statements by the cabinet members, including Netanyahu, and the actions of the military, this can only be described as genocide.
Yeah, I read the piece, Alan, and it was a really a heart-wrenching piece because here's someone, as you said, who lived, fought with the IDF, defended against attacks. And one of the key points that he said that stuck with me is the fact that as a Holocaust expert, in addition to a genocide expert, the moral high ground that the Israeli country, government, and people had, having been founded out of making reparations to them for the Holocaust that had been suffered, is now being destroyed by the actions of Netanyahu and his current government and what they're allowing the IDF to do. And what he's saying is, we as a people have lost our way morally, and it's going to be difficult for us to teach Holocaust history properly, to teach what a real genocide looks like if we're going to try to ignore what seems to be a genocide that those descendants who had suffered that are now perpetrating on someone else. It was a really heart-wrenching piece when I read it. And he said there are now fights going on in the academic community of folks who are experts in genocide and war crimes and the Holocaust, and the camp is being divided, being split. And the question is, how are we going to even live through this because of the actions that are being taken now? People are now giving cause to the Holocaust deniers. Okay? By denying what Israel is doing now as war crimes and genocide, it gives fodder to the Holocaust deniers who claim Holocaust never happened. That's made up what fake news, what fake history. And the points he was making were just so on target because all the goodwill that Israel had built up over the years as a supposed democracy surrounded by autocratic religious states, et cetera, has been totally decimated right now because of the last 2 years in Gaza. Period.
That what hit me about that article, and yeah, it is heart-wrenching to read it, is that he actually sets a very high bar for genocide. It's an extremely high bar before you can use that word. And I've been hesitant to use it on this program. I've had to use it lately, but he's a former IDF member, injured in war, a very loyal Israeli citizen who has no other, feels he has absolutely no other choice but to use that word not because he wants to, but because it qualifies. And yes, they've destroyed everything, every hospital, every school, every university, every government building, every highway, every water filtration plant. They've destroyed everything that would make it possible for them to stay. And add that to what's in the article. And unfortunately, you can't duck the genocide word.
Yeah. But Alan, I saw a recent article or op-ed piece that talked about why Netanyahu was perpetuating this quote war. We now put war in quotations because this article says this is no longer a war. And he quotes a former Israel defense minister, Israel Galon, as saying this is now nothing but total annihilation of a population. I'm paraphrasing. So we can say this war, but he kept this going because personally he'd be liable for all kinds of other prosecutions for what he was doing in his own country. And so the parallel is right here in this country. The guy who ran for president because he knew if he didn't win would be facing all kinds of charges and going to jail. And so the parallel is undeniable. You got two wannabe crazy autocratic guys who are destroying all democratic norms and all morality in power in a small country in the Middle East and in power in the quote largest democracy on the planet, not democracy, republic would be wannabe democracy, that is now being destroyed. And the only thing that's been pushing back against this Orange Julius crazy here has been the courts. And so we can segue to the fact that, yeah, this guy has been doing stupid, crazy stuff, and the Supreme Court of the United States has been letting him. Do we want to talk about the latest one, or do we want to talk about the pushback first? Let's get some positive news. Who's been trying to stop Donald Trump from trying to eviscerate the Constitution? At least one judge in LA, right, Bob? More than one, because there's a whole series of judges across the country that's been pushing back. But this latest one is worth talking about.
Yeah, a federal judge in California pushed back against what Kristi Noem and ICE had been doing in California, and basically just rounding up anybody who looked brown or spoke Spanish, and they would hit the malls, they would hit the job sites, and just go in there and grab people. But the judge, and I want to get her name, U.S. District Judge Mami Iwusi Mensah Frimpong, and she's a Biden appointee. Not that that means anything, but she granted 2 temporary restraining orders preventing officials from targeting people for removal on the basis of race, language, or employment, and an order that requires the Department of Homeland Security to grant anyone it detains access to legal counsel. 2 very basic legal concepts in this country. And what does Kristi Noem say? Quote, I'm reading from The Hill. Quote, well, this federal judge's ruling is ridiculous. We never ran our operations that way. I mean, and she later goes on in a different interview to call this judge. She said, he's an idiot, even though the judge is a woman. So this is one little bit of pushback. We don't see enough of this preventing ICE from basically running rampant, grabbing people and even senators, for God's sakes, out of rooms and trying to shut them down. It's a rare example where the federal courts have at least temporarily succeeded in pushing back against Trump, Kristi Noem, and Trump's administration.
Yeah, the usual stuff is another headline that I saw. Supreme Court clears way for mass firings at federal agencies. Okay. And so basically the judges announced that they were not ruling on the legality of the specific downsizing plans, but allowed the Trump administration to proceed for now with its restructuring efforts. And of course, Ketanji Brown pushed back, and she was like maybe the sole dissenter, saying you can't be doing stuff like that, because once that bell is rung, it's going to be hard to unring it. But the Supreme Court has been basically letting, to quote Jackson, it's not this court's role to swoop in and second guess a lower court's factual findings, because they dismissed the lower court rulings injunction stopping these mass firings. He said, Jackson wrote, echoing her dissent last month in the case limiting the power of lower court judges to block administration policies nationwide. He said, no one seriously disputes that the president's executive order would lead to enormous real-world consequences, including the dismantling of much of the federal government as Congress has created it. What one person or president might call bureaucratic bloat is a farmer's prospect for a healthy crop, a coal miner's chance to breathe free from black lung, or a preschooler's opportunity to learn in a safe environment. So she's saying, you might say I'm not ruling about this, but when you give him the green light to go ahead and do that, this is the consequence. And so that's been the norm about SCOTUS overruling those lower court judges. But it's not just SCOTUS. I read another article that talked about, you remember Judge Boasberg, who had said, you can't ship those planes out, you need to bring those planes back, etc.
Right, the plane full of
Yes.
detainees
Well,
heading for El Salvador. But go
he
ahead.
he told them, if you do not do what I say, I'm going to be thinking about serious contempt of court and possible criminal prosecution. And so a three-panel appellate judge stayed Boasberg thing on what they call a judicial stay, meaning, yes, we'll take a look at this to see whether or not you should move forward on those plans that you have to make these people comply with your rulings. Guess what? Two of Boasberg's stuff is sitting in limbo in those judicial stays by that particular appellate court. And basically, two of those three appellate judges, Donald Trump appointees. And so the judges who are trying to make these guys live up to the Constitution and the separation of powers are being stymied by SCOTUS and other judges that Trump appointed at the appellate level. So
Okay,
the
and
country
at this
is
point,
in this way.
okay, just giving a 2-minute warning. Go ahead.
Eric, let me say a couple of things on this, because what you introduced is of fundamental importance. Supreme Court has not ruled on the substance of any of these cases, especially things like the native-born citizens, which
Mhm,
is clearly he's violating the law.
mhm.
Instead, what they've done is they've made very narrow technical rulings, not on the substance of the case, but claiming that judges overstepped their bounds and they couldn't make the ruling that they make. So, and this has been on almost every case that has come forward. To empower Trump, what they've done is say, well, we can't, this case can't proceed until many years from now. And what Jackson has said is, in the meantime, all this harm is taking place.
Mhm.
Now, Amy Coney Barrett made an interesting point. She said that the universal injunctions had rarely been employed until the 21st century. It just didn't happen. And that's why there's no historical basis for it. But the problem, as Jackson pointed out, is we never had this level of illegality and unconstitutional behavior by a president of the United States. The
Right.
courts have taken this special role because democracy and rule of law in the United States are under such great threat.
Is it?
And with that, we're just about there.
Yep. Well, we didn't get to half the stuff we wanted to get to, but at least we dug into some of the stuff we needed to. And
Yes.
so, with further ado, this has been Media Watch, folks. I am your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.